I'm Joshua Adams, and this is the Industry Insights Podcast, where I am joined in the Rock Paper Simple studio by community leaders as we dive into industry topics and perspectives. Thanks for joining us. I have Joel Molinari, president and owner of Molinari Pools. Thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So you are a second generation owner. Your parents started Molinari Pools quite a while ago now. How many years is it now?
So they started in 96. So we're going on 28 years.
Awesome. Awesome. So today I'd like to talk about that journey, right? That journey of taking over the business, of kind of what that looked like and what it looks like going forward. So let's start with a little bit of, just tell me a little bit about the business. Tell me a little bit about your parents. I know you really speak highly of what they built. And I know that's one of the reasons you take it so seriously. So tell me a little bit about your parents and starting the company and what that looked like growing up with it.
Yeah, sure. So mom and dad have always been really hard workers, but didn't come from money. My dad's actually a high school dropout and really learned a lot in his teens and early 20s about hard work and about putting his hand to whatever he did and working hard at it and trying to succeed. And a lot of that, as he met my mom and started having a family, was as a motivation of supplying, providing for us. So that's kind of born and bred into us as a family, as his kids. And we've seen that journey both before the business was even begun. And then, my sister and I, and we were probably 9 and 10 years old, I believe, when they started the business. And so prior to starting the business, dad had a corporate job as a manager of a restaurant, part of a franchise. And he was able to kind of stockpile a little bit of savings, but he got a decent bonus check one year and just decided enough of this being away from my family and nights and weekends. And he decided to go ahead and give the government their cut. A little bit of taxes got taken out there, and whatever he had left, he said, I got to start a little small business and fight for more time with my family. And typical, kind of the American dream story, just sweat of your brow, a little bit of something, seed money, try to make something happen. And the pool industry is kind of a low barrier to entry, right? So it's easy to get a truck. And he had actually done the work before in his early 20s. He had worked for a while with a friend from our church. And that friend had kind of counseled him, listen, you don't have to keep doing that corporate thing. So took a bit of money, a bit of faith, and him and my mom said, let's do this for our family. Just started cleaning pools. And so a few years in, he wanted to repair those pools and renovate those pools, and he got his contractor's license. Jillian and I, my sister and I, she's in the business with me now, and you know her well. And
yes. So
we were, at home with mom. We were actually homeschooling. She was a converted, school teacher that converted to office manager, whatever, for my dad, helping. Just at the time, it was literally a mom and pop. It was the two of them and then some close friends and subcontractors, people in the industry that they worked closely with. And then they had a couple employees. But Jillian and I were kind of we'd be folding clothes, doing chores, whatever. We'd be folding envelopes, stuffing envelopes with invoices to send to clients. Back in the 90s, everything was paper. Didn't have the technology we have today, such. So that's where it started, right? And so every summer, weekends, whatever I could do to help my dad in the field, I did. We helped my mom in the office, obviously. And coming full circle, in my later teens, getting out of school, getting into college, it was kind of figuring out. I went to business school. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, really. And at the time, it wasn't a great time to just dream and venture, is start something new. In the 2008, 2009 was a little bit of a tough economy. So I came home. I just said, hey, Dad, I want to do something that I know I can succeed at, and put a little bit of money away, figure out where God's taking me. What's this next season of my life look like in my 20s? I wasn't dating anyone. I wasn't married. I didn't have any commitments. It was sort of like I could do anything, go anywhere. Came home, said, let me just figure this out foundationally. But I had a goal of owning a home, kind of getting my feet planted underneath me and then figuring some of that other stuff out. And I just started cleaning pools. I had done it for a long time. Started cleaning pools, started figuring out, how does this fit with my business goals, my dreams, aspirations I've had. And a few years later, kind of all culminating to, I did buy a home. I met the girl of my dreams. We started a family, and I had done several things in the business, not just cleaning the pools, but fixing the pools and leading people and figuring that stuff out. Right. So at the time, I think out of school, we had about 6 or 7 employees, maybe 7 employees, I think at the time. My parents obviously were still running the business, and I come in and there's this kind of like, well, what's the son of the owner's going to do? Do we have to work under him or what? But I was just one of the guys. I was one of the team, figuring it all out, learning the industry, learning our materials, learning our processes. And so from there, I obviously kind of worked through each position, literally, from cleaning to safety to repair to renovation to, and even to this day, we're pioneering getting into the new builds. It's like that stuff is fun for me, the variety, and then trying to help build the team around, I think that was one of the bigger lessons as we grew was I probably had about 15 or 18 people around me as an ops leader. And my dad and mom are still involved, but my dad really, as an operations leader, he kind of let me shoulder where we're taking some of the growth of the company because he and I are both very growth minded. And as an ops leader, it was sort of almost a workaholic approach. Give me more to do and give me more people to do it, and we'll fight our way up. And we grew a ton, but it was tough. So we really had to readjust. And so kind of digressing a little bit, there's been a lot of lessons in the last 14, 15 years as I've kind of come alongside them. And that wasn't an original plan of succession for them to hand the baton to me. But obviously we all knew it could happen. Wasn't my original dream, right? So all things considered, it's been a pretty neat journey to this point, and it's cool to share some of this with you.
Yeah, no, and I got to see a little bit of the journey too. And so I actually knew your dad first. And so we were in C12 together as
That's
a
right.
CEO roundtable. He and I were in a similar group. And so I got to hear some of what was going on and hear a little bit of this maybe succession plan thing. And, and I didn't know him long before really you took over. But I got to know him a little bit, and it was really interesting to see that and then see that switch, right? And then seeing as you took over the unique challenges that you had and saying, okay, what's it look like to now begin to be the one to cast the vision, right? And set the direction and be the one that's responsible and, honor the legacy and honor what's been built, right? And you were obviously, that was a big responsibility, but it was really cool to kind of see that, right? And then you joined the group and replaced your dad in the group, and we've known each other for how long now?
A few years.
Yeah.
A few years.
Yeah.
And I do remember as you're saying that, I remember my dad mentioning you joining the group because he had been around a while. He and I joined in 2015, and I was in the key player group and he's in the CEO group. And I remember him mentioning, this Josh fella, he's in marketing and we could probably learn a lot, do a lot, kind of just picking his brain. I'm excited to get some of his feedback about our business. And as you and I have shared a lot of our marketing past, a lot of typical mom and pop stuff, but that's obviously led to the point we're at now with this kind of this brand transformation we've just gone through together. But yeah, it's been several years, and it's been a neat journey, discovering even your brand and how we can kind of bring our brand to life as going from that old, our original logo was a swimming pool kind of sketch with a palm tree in the corner and a little ladder to climb out of the deep end. Every pool had a ladder back in the day and a beach ball in the middle. And then, it said Joel Molinari Pool Service. And it was like, you can't tell what that is driving down the road on the side of a van. It's a mouthful. Like you can't see it. You can't understand. And a lot of small mom and pop pool companies have the pool with the beach ball and the palm tree and the umbrella. It's like, I kind of wanted to shed that mom and pop feel, and not from a standpoint of how we deliver and how we care for people, but from a standpoint of how we present ourselves. It felt too focused, too one-dimensional. So, but yeah, it's been neat. It's been cool, for the last several years.
So how did it, before, and I know I do want to talk about the branding stuff, and obviously that's a passion of mine, but how did it look when you guys decided, okay, we're going to do this handoff, right? We're going to do this transition without getting into too many of the details. I know we can probably talk for hours on that.
Yeah, sure.
But what did that look like for those that maybe they're thinking about going through that transition? I know I've actually connected you with friends in the past that were looking at doing the similar thing, and you shared some wisdom. Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah.
But what did that look like?
Yeah, I think, early on it was an interesting kind of, I guess, tension of what are they hoping to accomplish or achieve, if that's the right word? And what am I hoping? How do we, because I'm in my mid 20s, getting to my late 20s, they're getting into their mid 50s, thinking through, obviously wanting to continue to earn and they give a ton out of what they earn. And it's really neat to fund missions and things in the community. And, um, but so for us, we had to kind of figure that out as we went, and we did it a lot together. We did it a lot of just sharing time, sharing conversations. I mean, honestly, Josh, going back when I was young, there were days my dad was like, fold this thing up and give it away. Like, I'm frustrated. And you can relate, like small business owners and leaders can relate. There's days and times. I mean, heck, anybody can relate to being discouraged in a job, in a workplace, in a setting, maybe it's a tough project. Maybe it's you're working late and you got personal stuff going on. I mean, but he was dealing with some of that stress, and I'm just sitting here going, okay. And that's part of what motivated me to get into that operations leader role, to kind of walk alongside him, because it's such a visionary. Mom's such a task oriented person. And there had to be this kind of bridge of, mom and dad always being together personally, professionally. It was like, so I kind of was that third leg of the stool to kind of work through that. And so all those years prior to me joining formally, and then post me joining formally, we had been working through those dynamics. People thought I was crazy. You probably observed some of this in some of our conversations around the table, talking about succession, but it's like, we didn't have formal written agreements about every last thing. My dad and mom always treated me as a son, not as a subject, if that makes sense. Like, kings have subjects, fathers and mothers have kids, right? So they treated me well, with the vision to put me on their shoulders and allow me to see further and go further and do more with the foundation they gave me, versus start over on my own and build my own foundation and figure all that stuff out. So yeah, I was delivered plenty of challenges of, how do you run this small, medium business and morph it into a different type of business or a different brand or a different culture. But I wasn't given a ton of, challenges of having to build with maybe debt and leverage or things like that. I was given a substantial name and a great foundation. So we both had an appreciation, they and myself had an appreciation for maybe at the time what we were both trying to accomplish, as we kind of had to ideate and iterate together of what is this going to look like? What are we each getting out of this? And how does it honor and serve the legacy of our family name, but of our people and of our community? Because at the end of the day, the money is just the tool. The details are just stuff. It's the people, and we wanted to honor each other. We wanted to honor our team, our community. So it was an interesting dynamic. One really big helpful piece for us was C12, and some of the tools within there for family succession, for business succession, and then obviously we had an attorney, an accountant, just walking alongside us, the typical tools you need to figure out this stuff. But that's just numbers. Like, it's just details. So really you have to kind of sort through some of the emotional stuff and some of the transitional stuff pretty early on, or else it can be problematic to kind of hit too many snags along that journey. For us, it was a several year journey really to get to the point where it actually happened. I remember prior to the transaction, prior to the purchase, which was less than 2 years ago, really. It was the beginning of last year, the formal, kind of transaction that happened. But a couple years prior to that, I think it was mid 2019 or so, I was, appointed the CEO. So dad was the president of the corporation, but I was the CEO of running the day-to-day business. And obviously in that, I learned a ton in those couple of years, and that gave us even more time to, transition healthy. There's still some clients who call him, and they've known him since the very beginning, since the late 90s. And
Right,
it's say, hey, Joel, this is what we're thinking. This is what we need. What do you think? And he's so gracious. He doesn't say, call the office or this or that. Like, he still has their number in his phone. He still takes their calls, and he still kind of is a liaison. He's a founder. He's, he and she both. My mom, just loves talking with folks. And so anyhow, so as we kind of come back to, it's been a several year journey, really figuring out the details and such, but a lot of the family dynamics and the emotions, when it's a family transaction, those are some of the most important. You have to prioritize those things the most.
Right.
Otherwise it's just asking for frustration. And, with all the other family dynamics and things of just growing up together, living in close proximity for a lot of years and hurts and whatever, that's obviously going to inject some challenge into a business transaction. But for us, it was something we leaned into. We had to have hard conversations. We're Italian. We had to have some loud conversations, right? But we always come to the table and we always, with grace and understanding, apologize to each other and own it and give forgiveness and respect. And so, didn't always do it right, especially as a son. Sometimes there was maybe disrespect or dishonor, but I always had to own it and go, hey, like, you guys started this thing. I want to give you first right of refusal to all the ins and outs, and they treated me equally as graciously. So
That's awesome. And it is funny hearing the timing of that, because I remember, I think I joined C12 beginning of 2019. So it would have been a little bit before that transition when you became CEO. So then you joined our group.
Yep.
And your dad stepped out, which was really interesting. So I got to engage with you for a couple of years before the transaction and before it was official. So
that's right.
That was a really interesting journey on my side to kind of see it. You brought some challenges to the group. On that side, there were a couple key things I think that were part of that journey, right?
Yep.
And so, what were some of the things you felt like once you established that, and there was the transaction and things transpired there? What were some of the key things that you felt were big in terms of the next steps?
Yeah. So I think at that point, for me, I had to really start to look at where we're taking the company as the leader now, as the one that people are following, not Joel Sr. and Vicky anymore, but Joel Jr. What are we looking to accomplish? Sort of really essentially vision. Where does Joel Jr. feel like we're supposed to take this company? And so for me, it was a lot of time with the Lord, reflection with family, thinking through the bigger picture long-term, and then thinking through the day-to-day of what I've been through in the last, whatever at that time, 12 years prior in the company, with the clients, with the team, and sort of building upon that foundation I referenced earlier, building, kind of getting up on their shoulders, seeing further, thinking through how we can take the company in a continued growth trajectory, but possibly slightly different, possibly a slight pivot, not a complete drift away from the mission, vision, and values we had previously established, but more or less kind of, I guess, strengthening and deepening those roots and figuring out what do we need to do in the near term to accomplish the long term. And that challenged me to figure out the long term. Prior, you'll remember, we didn't have a 10-year big, hairy, audacious goal. We didn't have that long-term vision. And not that dad and mom didn't have a vision, but we didn't articulate it well, right? So, and for him, it was always, what's Joel Jr. thinking? Because he's really kind of a lot like me, and we're very visionary together. And so he and I gave each other maybe the space to kind of just stay in like a neutral, unfully clear, what's our long-term vision? So we did. We nailed that down, right? And that was a fun process with a couple of my key leaders, and just working through that, and we did. We nailed that down. We with the EOS process, it's been really neat over the last 3 years. I guess it's been maybe 2.5, 3 years of identifying our uniques, figuring out what our target market, exactly what our target market is, right? With you guys and kind of the transformation we've done with our entire brand look and feel. The love people, love pools. That was really birthed out of, for me, the commandment to love God and love people, right? It doesn't say make a lot of money. It doesn't say build this massive conglomerate. It doesn't say any of that. Not that any of that stuff's bad. Money's tools, and conglomerates bless people, and if they're used well, things like that. But for me, it was love people, love pools, was that basically kind of subliminal, loving God's first by honor him. Now my day-to-day walk is loving people, and we do that by loving pools. So the 30-some folks that I get to interact with day in and day out as my team get to love on hundreds of clients by taking care of their stuff and by allowing them to make those memories week in and week out on their nights and weekends at the home. And maybe a lot of it's centered around exercise and enjoyment and just the fun that you can have in those spaces.
Yeah, I love that. And it was part of, during some of the rebranding process we were working on together, that came about.
That's right.
It was actually in our conference room here, I think.
That's right.
We sat down and we were kind of going through what is our purpose statement? Why do we exist? And we had a lot of ideas. Some of them were a lot more boring than that.
That's right.
And as we dug into it, it was
a lot longer.
Yeah, a lot longer.
Just kind of like wordy
and
you kind of get the heart behind it, but it doesn't really like stick with people. And that one just, I mean, I had been thinking about it for a few weeks and kind of thinking through, I want this to matter, not just for today, not just for this year, this 10-year vision period of my life, but the legacy of who the company is and how we bless our community. Right. I mean, Indian River and Brevard County are just small towns, you know, a lot of folks that are just good folks. And for me, it was about that more than about how do we build a big brand or a big thing. It's just start there, and then the rest takes care of itself in a way.
Right. But what that did is it gave the brand a heart. Right?
That's right.
And I think that's something that's missing a lot of times with brands is you have people think it's just a logo, right? It's just let me design a logo.
Right.
But if there's no heart or meaning or depth or purpose behind that logo, then what's the point? Well, what is it trying to say? Right. Because the logo represents something.
Yep.
It's in itself the brand. Right.
Right.
And I think once we hit on that, I just remember the kind of room kind of went, wait a minute, that's it. That's it.
Yep.
And it really, it did a few things that it helped anchor it in the people and in the fact of, hey, we want to love on people. We want to make a difference in their lives. There's a faith element there that was, how do we tie in this faith element without beating people over the head with it?
That's
was really what we were trying to do. Remember that conversation, that dialogue.
Absolutely.
And so how do we, honor God through that, but also know, hey, once we've got that piece of it, we're supposed to love on people. That's our commandment. It's the second greatest commandment, right?
Right.
And so I think that being captured there was really cool.
Yeah.
But then tying it to the industry and how do we do it? Well, by loving pools. Like we love what we do, and if we love what we do and we love it on people, we're going to create a better experience. And I also remember specifically was this applies to the people who work at Molinari Pools, but also those that we are serving, and also the community, and also anyone else we impact by the organization existing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the part of it that I love the most about impacting our client, right? We're obviously blessing them by serving them and doing the things we do as a service company to create or maintain those spaces. But for them, that love people, love pools is a challenge for maybe the obligatory pool owner who's like, I bought the home because my real estate agent said the home, its value is preserved by having this pool in the backyard. And maybe at some point we interact with them and they're just like, gosh, this darn thing is broken and I'm frustrated and I don't even hardly use it. And you go, well, and hopefully subliminally, like our branding and our peopling and just what we do gives them a little bit of like, gosh, I have that pool. I really ought to use it. It's going to be great. And when they do have those kids or grandkids in the season of life where they're using it a ton, we can kind of create converts of like, we love our pool.
Right.
Because those are the ones we just absolutely find so much joy in serving. Maybe it's the dog that loves the pool. It doesn't matter. The pool is a big part of their home and a big part of their life. And so it's fun to kind of see that conversion in our team, in our clients, and how our branding and our purpose statement can make an impact. For me, it's over the last year, whatever it's been since we created that statement, it's been a lot of challenging mornings and a lot of challenging afternoons and kind of that gut check. And I believe if your purpose statement, it can't be far-flung and far-fetched, but it also should be challenging, and it should be kind of that, am I on true north? Is the compass right? Like, where are we at? Because a lot of times for me, I have to do that. I have to reorient myself to the compass and go, all right, am I loving people or am I being stubborn and grouchy and, having a moment? And we do that well as a team. And even with y'all's team, there's been dynamics of like, this is great. We're loving people. Or sometimes it's like, hey, are you okay? Are you loving people? Do you need some loving? Like, what's going on? It's just been a really neat way to kind of keep true north.
No, I agree. And one of the cool things with the way we work together, obviously we work with the agency, Rock Paper Simple has worked on the projects and the branding, but I've also had the opportunity to do some consulting work with you and be fractional on your leadership team as your fractional chief marketing officer, which has been a really, really awesome experience. Yeah. What that has allowed me to do is kind of see a little bit deeper into what you're building and what you're doing. And one of the cool things that I felt with a brand, again, people look at that and say, well, it's my logo, it's my website, it's those things. But a brand is the essence of the organization, right? It's representing something. I said that already, but the reason I'm bringing this up is I love, and this ties to EOS as well, your scorecard, right? How you measure if the company's doing well, if you're succeeding. And your leadership L10, I'm going to share something, and you stop me if I'm oversharing. But I love that one of the numbers is love people conversations. How many conversations have you had, your leadership team had in that week that loves on people, right? That's checking in on them to see how they're doing. And you count that. And frankly, if that score is below the number you're expecting, we drop it down and we talk about it.
Right.
Which is really, really refreshing, because what it tells me is that you set that love people, love pools. And it's just not just a tagline that sounds fancy and yay, it's on the truck. It's, it's everywhere. But it actually is lived out, which is really cool. And I've often preached kind of this idea of, if you're going to build a brand, please live the brand, like walk through it. If you say this is who we are, then be it, then be that, right?
It's got to be real and it's got to matter.
Yeah. And so I share that insight a little bit because I have a unique perspective of being able to be in those leadership team meetings with your team, in that seeing that walked out. And I'd love to see that walked out in more brands, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I think in not too far past, in the last few weeks, I'll say, just to not out myself too bad, but in recent weeks, I've had to actually look at that number and go, how have I contributed to that number? And whether it's with the leadership team in the room, who I interact with on a, me to them level right away, or whether it's with the rest of our team, who sometimes I don't see hardly at all. But if I saw them once this week, did I love them? Did I honor them? Did I serve them? Did I care about them? My family, the clients, so there's often time, because it doesn't have to be the team member that we have a love people convo with.
Right.
It could be somebody that's the neighbor of somebody we're serving, and they're having a tough day and hands are full and they're dropping stuff in the driveway. And, hey, can we help you walk the groceries up? Or can I get your trash can? Or, the dog's running away down the street in the neighborhood and they need 20 minutes of our time to help get the dog. Love people convos and love people interactions don't have to be supervisor to subordinate. They don't have to be leader to team member, right? It can be up. Like a lot of times my team encourages me. And so whether they're not counting that, or whether they're counting that as the metric or not, it does count for the impact it creates. Right. So we set that goal for ourselves as a group to hit a certain amount of combos. And generally we're all hoping to have at least one or two. With somebody who's going through something or having some, maybe just a tough moment, maybe a challenge. And it's not a cop out thing. Like, I helped so-and-so check a box of a to-do or whatever. It's more or less like, did you make an impact on them that mattered more than making money or accomplishing a task? Did you love them? Did you help them get through a tough moment? Or, really, really a neat, I guess byproduct of kind of the brand transformation and how to make it real and impactful.
I love that so much. I mean, as you know, our purpose statement is because people matter. So we have a similar passion of making sure we're taking care of our people, but also the customers we serve and the community at large. So I think we're very aligned on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your this story and this journey. It's really been a pleasure for our team to work with you. It's really funny hearing the team talk about making sure they get a Molinari hat or shirt or something from you guys. The team really has enjoyed this journey, and I appreciate being able to be a part of this brand transformation together, and being involved with your leadership team and kind of seeing this journey that you've been on has been really, really wild.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you for having us and being a part of this together. It's been great.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Industry Insights. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe, comment, or even drop us a line over at rockpapersimple.com.